Start recording. Okay, so this is how to start a team in college. We've already gone over this. We've done introductions, so I'm going to skip over that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of continuing to jump in college for the sport and also just like personal importance. Kind of go over expectations and experiences for jumping in college, and then kind of go into some basic steps you can do to start a team, run the team once it is started, and then try to ensure some sustainability. Yeah. So why is it important to jump in college? One big importance is just expanding the reach of the sport. So we all want to see the sport do well and continue to grow. And one of the main ways that we personally can contribute to that now is growing it in college, making it more legitimate with sports clubs and student organizations, and just putting it to new people who have never seen it before. The testimonials we saw are from people who had never seen the sport before college. So if we can continue to find and recruit more people, that's a great way to grow the sport. And I think the sport also doesn't have to be as competitive as we've always grown up in doing. It can be more fun and more performance and more freedom and independence than just like competing to win a big competition. It's also important for us, since we are experienced in the sport, to continue to be in it because we are the next generation of leaders, whether that means we're going to be coaching a team, we're going to be judges for competitions, if we're going to organize workshops or camps, or even run organizations like ANJRF or USA Jump Rope or any other organization. You know, we're getting that experience locally running your local team or university team, and then also kind of with NCJRA, with our committees, getting that experience of like running things across the country is just really good experience in the sport and outside of the sport. I mean, you get really good leadership and organizational skills that you can apply to almost any job you get. Also good for improving and maintaining physical and mental health. Jump rope is great exercise, a great study break to keep yourself grounded and kind of do something that you're familiar with and that you love, because college can be stressful. And then, of course, creating a community. College is new, it can be scary. So it's always great to have like a community that you're familiar with. Yeah, I'm gonna open it up to anyone else who wants to add things. I know I've talked a lot and I probably will talk a lot, but you don't have to stay on mute. If anyone else who kind of can think of some things of why it's important to jump in college, feel free to jump in.
I don't really have anything to add to that, but I think the like creating community in a new place is probably one of the biggest ones. I think a lot of people like come into college looking for something to be a part of, and a lot of like the people that have joined us this year, they like a lot of them came from like a mega fair thing, which we'll probably talk about, but they just were like, I just loved the people here and I just like wanted to be a part of it, even if they like weren't the best jump roper in the world. They were just like wanted to be around, and yeah, just like making friends who are going to like encourage you and build you up. I think that is something that's really cool about jump rope. So just finding friends that are going to be awesome. So that's my biggest one.
Yeah. Annabelle, I saw you made a note about an RA position. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so it was kind of similar. The community was a huge piece of why I've started it here and what's been really successful about Middlebury Jump Rope. And so I do serve as sort of an RA position kind of here. So I am in charge of like a hall of people. And one of the things that really got us together in the beginning and me to meet like all of my hall people is that I like had been talking to people about jump roping, and somebody had asked me like, hey, do you have any jump ropes that you could bring out into the hallway? And then we had like one night where people were jumping all like the entire hallway. We got them all together jumping, and that was like the first night when we really started to know each other. And ever since, they've been like coming to the practices that I hold and stuff, and it's been just a really nice way for me to meet people in like this type of position, and also for them to like meet each other, especially during COVID when it's really tough to meet people in person. So that can be a really great thing from either side, as like a new person coming in or as somebody that is in like an RA position like that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll keep moving here. So this slide is kind of just like what to expect when jumping in college if you are used to the sport. So we kind of touched on new roles in the sport a little bit earlier, but you know, you're going to be on your own. You're not going to have a coach telling you when to practice and what to practice. And you're going to kind of be transitioning into kind of further away from the sport. It's not as easy to get away on the weekend to go to all the same workshops and competitions. So you kind of have to pick and choose, which can be a little bit, I have the word disconnection here, because you can feel a little disconnected and lonely, not lonely, but you feel like left out because you can't always be doing the same thing with the same friends. But at the same time, you're going to be at college making a bunch of new connections and new opportunities, which is super exciting. There is freedom and less structure. So just talking to a lot of people at UNC, they didn't maybe have a great experience in high school, trying to balance school and practice every night and maybe tough coaches. But in college, you can kind of set your own schedule, which is really great. But also tied into that, there's pros and cons for all of this, is time constraints, because college can be stressful, exams suck, exam week sucks. So just kind of balancing social life with academics and then finding time for sport and maybe starting a new team can all be a lot. So I'll open it up again to other people here who kind of want to talk about their experiences, probably because you're closer in age to us starting college and what that like transition period was from high school into college.
So I can add kind of two things. The first is the structure bit. So I guess for starters, when I meet up, if I convince my friends to kind of jump with me, one of the big things is they don't want a practice like I would have been practicing for the last X number of years. They want to make a TikTok that involves twerking that has a double under in it because that's the only trick they know how to do. And so that's kind of a thing that you have to kind of, it's not the same as it was when you were in high school training X number of hours a week and getting ready for national competitions. They just want to do like a cross and they're like, oh my gosh, I got a cross. And that's it. So that, and then also on the same thing, like structure, like I could walk to my gym. Gyms are open now. I don't want to walk all the way to my gym. I don't have time for that. I jump in my parking lot for 20 minutes, like a couple times a week if I can bring myself to do that, you know? So it's really going to be a big change. And that's the other thing is it's hard. Reach out to people. You've been doing this for so long. And I think that's part of it with jump rope is none of us even remember how long we've been doing it. You know, we're like, how many years has it been? And so then you hit this switch within the span of like a day or a week and you're just not doing it anymore. And that's just like, it's difficult. I'm going to be honest. It's really difficult because you've been doing it for so long. So much of your life has revolved around it. And now you're a different person. It's your whole identity. Whenever you go to a place, like I'm a jump roper. So just kind of finding that balance of keeping with it, but also realizing it doesn't have to be the only thing you do anymore because it's not going to be.
I think I was going to say something kind of similar, also different to that. Sorry, there's people coming through, but I think like you almost have to like make it structured, kind of like your practices, because the first few years of Miami jump rope, we kind of just like show up whenever you want, come if you feel like it, play, jump rope, whatever. And then like when we really wanted to get serious and start like bringing them to competitions and stuff like that, we kind of had to make it a little bit more serious of like, hey, today we're going to do this thing. You're going to learn these skills. If you're not cool with that, you can do random tricks over here. You know what I mean? So we like still had the option of like messing around and playing, but you sometimes do have to like step into the role of like coach and like, I don't know, like coming up with a practice plan of like, what are we going to do today? How are we going to prepare for this performance that we have or something like that? And also just how much you teach. I think that was kind of a shocker at first. Like I was like, oh, I'll bring my friends and like teach them while I do my own tricks, but I like didn't get to do my own tricks. And so like, if you want to jump on your own, you like kind of do have to go separately because it's awesome to teach our friends, but it's kind of a shock that like you are not doing more than like crosses and toads and things like that for like, and that's like your jump rope for the day, if that makes sense. So you kind of have to like make a whole separate time for yourself to jump. And when you're kind of teaching and coaching as an experienced jumper.
Yeah, I think that was really good points from both of you. I remember being like, oh, college, there's so many good people here. I'm going to get so much better. I have all the time to practice and improve my speed scores. And then I was teaching 3 days a week and I was like, oh, shoot, we need to schedule an actual time for like me to focus on myself. And also you mentioned like coaching, it definitely is a little awkward when you're like telling other jumpers who've been in the sport for 10 years and trying to like tell them what to do during practice, just because you want that structure and want to be ready for a show or a competition or whatnot. So it is a balancing act, but it's definitely doable and definitely worthwhile. I'm going to keep this moving here just so we can get going. We don't have any novice athletes on this call, which is totally fine. I think those testimonials were great. Thank you, Emma, for collecting those. But just some things to maybe keep in mind, that they will be joining a new family. So we all know each other and we like know a lot about the sport. So it might be a little awkward if we're at certain events like the summit and you get to see your old friends, but they don't know anyone. So making sure that you make them feel included and part of this new family. A great way to, impress new friends if they're not used to the sport. A fun way to stay fit. I think it was interesting. We heard kind of two different viewpoints of why people stayed in. One was like part of her exercise routine, and one was more like community and fun. Both very valid, and it is also a balancing game to meet both of those interests in starting the team so that you can have like as many people as possible come. And then the last bullet I have here is just playing catch up. So it is easier to teach college people, I think, just because they're older, they're more coordinated, they kind of catch on quickly, but there's no way to make up for 10 years of the sport. That's just not going to happen. So sometimes it can get frustrating for them if they see you and other people getting skills or routines really quickly and they're struggling. So just always being hyper aware that like it's not their fault, like just being super encouraging. And I think a lot of you do that already, but just to keep that in mind. Does anyone have anything to add to that before we get into the logistics of starting a team? Okay, cool. So where to start? My biggest suggestion is do your research, because each university is a little different in what requirements they have, as far as how many people to start a student organization. If you can start a sports club first, at least at UNC, you had to have been a student organization for 2 years before you could be a sports club. Most of this stuff is available online during your first year. There's usually student club websites or wellness centers, and you can kind of see what the requirements are. We also do have bylaws on our website. So if you start a club, you're probably going to have a set of bylaws which basically just outline the purpose of the club, how it's structured, what the leadership is like, et cetera, et cetera. They can be a little tricky. So we have some templates that you can honestly just copy and paste and adapt to your own university, which can be super helpful. Just be aware that your club or your university may have specific clauses that you need to keep in there. So just double check that. If you are on campus with other jumpers, definitely try to recruit them to help. I was really lucky at UNC. I know a couple other of you who had other jumpers on campus, because that makes it much easier to have, 2 people turning the ropes or 2 different teachers versus being on your own. Like Annabelle and Emma, I don't even know how you do it. So any advice would be helpful for that. I think everyone's touched on bringing along your friends. That's a great way to get those numbers up. Even if they don't stay with it, just to have those numbers to start a club is always helpful. Finding a faculty advisor, this was something we needed at UNC. So finding like a teacher, professor, someone who's interested and you can be like friendly with to support you. I think it goes a long way, because when they see that you're interested in taking a leadership role on campus, they kind of can be very useful in the future for recommendation letters, for scholarships, for grad school, for jobs. And that's a really great way to use jump rope to kind of further your professional and academic career in the future. And then lastly, ask for help. There's a lot of us who have been through this before, and we are more than happy to help. We have a lot of resources and experiences to share, so don't be afraid to ask for help. There might also be local teams by you. So we relied on the Super Skippers in North Carolina here to do some of our shows when we didn't have UNC folks that were free, or to help teach us on some of our workshops when we were low staffed. So that's something you can also keep in mind. Yeah, that's my off the bat suggestions there. I'll open it up again to anyone else to add on where to start with a team.
I think I definitely agree with like figuring out what it looks like at your university and asking for help from those people at the university too, because they are also probably like students that are running student organization stuff and like advisors that have a lot of other things to do. And so they probably aren't going to be like, hey, you said you wanted to do this thing. How can I help you? It's like, hey, I need this. Can you set up a meeting with me? Can you meet at this time? Like trying to just like, you're being the one that's pushing it and like pushing for things to keep happening with jump rope. So if you want it, it might be a little bit of work at first to get it started, but then once you're like established, it's a lot easier to run. But definitely starting out, it's kind of in your court. So I don't know. Hopefully that's helpful. Just keep pushing people because it's probably not their priority, but if it's yours, you can make it happen.
All right. So once you kind of have a team, and that can be a long process, even if you have a team, it might take a while, especially now during COVID, to get things up and running. But a few maybe tips that can help are creating social media. So just making it easy for people to find you. If you're posting videos, if you're posting open gyms, just getting the info out there and making it like centralized and easy to access. Another helpful tip is securing regular gym space and ropes. We definitely had a similar experience. I think Allie touched on this earlier, just like random practices come when you want. It can be fun, but it doesn't always work when you're starting a team and trying to grow. It helps to still kind of have that structure. You maybe don't need practice every night, once or twice a week, but just making sure that you have consistent gym space and ropes just makes it easy for people to find you. Developing practice plans is always important. Not showing up to practice and not really having an idea what you're going to do that day doesn't always work, especially if you have new folks that you're trying to teach. So I know like Graham and I always try to come up with like 3 or 4 activities or like fun games or workouts that we could do, or like a routine that we could teach to make sure that we had a plan that day. I would say advertise everywhere. You know, at college, everyone has like Facebook groups for admitted students for different interests for this and that. You have posters and flyers all over the place. At UNC, we would chalk the sidewalks for a lot of student orgs, and you could say like open gym, jump rope, and put it like in the pit where everyone walks by. So advertising is super helpful. A lot of teams have done promo videos. We had one at UNC that went like viral. We had like 50,000 views and got a bunch of people like commenting and interested on it. I know Case Western just did their first promo video, so I think those are always helpful. Collabing with other orgs, I think we can do that in a couple different ways. We did a lot of like halftime performances for a cappella groups. They loved us for some reason, so they would like sing 4 or 5 sets. We would go up on stage, do a jump rope show, get everyone super hype, and then they would like come back and do their like final sets. I don't know why they all loved us, but we probably did like 4 or 5 a cappella shows a year, which was hilarious to me. But that's just a great way to get out into the student body and get more people to see you. Also with sports clubs, there was like an incentive. We got points throughout the year for doing volunteer activities and whatnot, and those points turned into money at the end of the year. And one of the ways that we got points was if we did collaborative volunteering and collaborative activities with other clubs. So we teamed up with like the volleyball club and like taught each other different things. And then we could put that down and get points for it, which was super cool. And then the last thing is applying for funding. So money, you don't need a lot of money to run a club, but it is helpful to buy ropes and buy t-shirts and kind of create your brand and logo on campus, so you can be recognizable. So those are some of my tips on how to get running with a team. I'll open it up again for other people to talk about what they've done.
I think also one really important thing that I've been figuring out recently is being really on top of like emailing, which I'm not always the best at, but especially during COVID, since our club was kind of started right as COVID hit. So our entire life has been throughout COVID as of right now. and people are really slow at responding to emails right now. And sometimes you just have to be really on top of like sending multiple emails and being like, hey, I still haven't heard back from this. I'm really trying to secure this gym space on this day. Can I please, can we talk about that? Or reach out to like multiple different people, be really on top of like who you're sending things to, and making sure that they're going through and that somebody's seeing your emails, because it's tough right now. But as Noah said, this is really important stuff for starting a team.
I think email is a good point.
You go, sorry.
Like if you have a team email, like we did like carolinajumprope@gmail.com, just so people feel like they know who to respond instead of just like a random student account. And then that way, whenever you leave the university, the team still has that email that they can continue to use in pubbing events and reaching out to organizations. Sorry, Emma.
I was just going to add one small thing about collaborating with other organizations. I know you had mentioned a cappella groups, but think even in sports. I know my school has a ton of random clubs. So like slackline or spike ball or that sort of thing. And for like orientation week and stuff, they like to group us together because we're the funky sport. We're the out there thing that people will pick up and be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. So if you find a sport like that, I don't know if y'all schools have like slackliners or whatever, but that can be another way to kind of, because then it's a larger group of people. Say each club has 8 people, then you have like a 20 something group of people that are all in this funky little group of funky sports. So
I love that. I think we had like a circus club on campus, and people like love jump rope and also like unicycling and all that crazy stuff. Okay, so my next tip here is creating a team culture. I think this helps with a lot of different things, but one thing I mentioned before is branding. So like creating the logo and putting that on everything you do is like really helpful. Just you can be identifiable on campus through that. Coming up with cool uniforms or t-shirts is always fun. Creating a culture can also be in how you recruit people. So I'm curious to hear kind of what other teams have done. At first, at least for UNC, we just kind of had like come whenever you want. You can join halfway through the year, at the end of the year, etc. But I think it's really helpful when people all join at the same time so they can like learn things together and feel like a part of a cohort or community. So we kind of had like an informal like tryout process where we had everyone come for the first like month and learn a routine. And we didn't cut anyone, but they had to be able to do a routine without a miss before they could come do our shows with us. And that was kind of a way to build a community and recruit people at once. I know Stanford actually has like a cut process. They're like very serious because they have so many people come out for their team that they have like 2 or 3 weeks where they teach skills and a routine and they come and perform in front of you. And it's kind of like an a cappella tryout. You like get cut or you make the team. For most of us, that's probably not how it's going to be because we don't have that many people interested, but creating that sense of culture and like cohort and cohesion is really helpful. Another way to do that once people are on the team is social events. So whether that's like team dinners, after practice, volunteering together on the weekends, doing some sort of social event just to have fun is always nice. And then also creating a culture, dependability. So making sure that you're responsive to emails, that you're showing up on time to performances on campus, that you, if you're like working in the community with kids, that you're like respectable and mature because people definitely do remember you and you're always representing your university. So even if you're not on campus, if you're competing at nationals or worlds, you can wear your logoed shirt, represent your university, just make sure you do that well. Those are a few of my tips. I'll open it up again to how some of you all are creating like a team culture on your campus.
I think I remember Stanford talking about how they have their like tryout process. And one of the things they mentioned, I just thought I would add it in, is that they kind of said that when you have a tryout, it feels more cool and more serious and more elite. Even if it's not anything difficult, it just adds that next level. So people are like, oh, I get to try out, or I have to try, like as opposed to just like showing up, like, oh, I can show up, but I get to like try out and win and like be chosen. So that was kind of another thing they had mentioned.
I think making it seem like more formal kind of, because that was something like we when we were sophomores and freshmen, like it was just us and our friends going mostly. But then when we kind of like, now we don't know these people that are coming around, and so they like think that this is like super serious, and we want it to be like serious, but they're like, oh, I have to be at jump rope. They like will skip other things to like be here, and so we're like, oh shoot, like we need to be as like committed to that, like to this as they are. So just like making it something that they can commit to, and I think tryouts helps a lot with that. We haven't done tryouts, but we did as we were preparing for the summit. We were like, hey, maybe wait to bring your new friends until like April, until we've like finished preparing. Because it is hard when you're like trying to prepare and do this stuff, and then there's like random people that are showing up and like, I want to learn how to do a cross, and you're like, great, but I need to do this too. So it's a lot to like manage when there's people just coming in and out at the same time. So yeah, I think like formalizing it a little bit is helpful, and making it seem like something that they should be invested in if we're more invested. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what we've learned this year. So.
Yeah, it does. No, well, if you need to get going for the workshop, it looks like you're getting ready. Feel free.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have to head to the rec now, so I'm probably gonna skirt out if that's all right.
Yeah,
but
no worries. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great presentation. I really liked it. I'll see y'all later.
Bye, Noelle.
Bye.
One other little like thing I was going to add here, you mentioned Stanford. I know that they've also said that they have like a retreat weekend where they all like get a cabin somewhere and spend the weekend together, just like bonding. I don't know what they do, but it sounds fun. And I remember they also said after their tryout process, they like let people know that they made the team by knocking on their door at like 2 a.m. and then they all go to Waffle House. It's just like a late night, very chill, like fun activity that just kind of creates like a team bonding and just very fun social. So we try to do a little bit of that at UNC. We had like a workshop or like a retreat weekend. It was on campus, but we just like came up with the showcase for the year and just spent the whole weekend like coming up with fun routines to music and kind of like what our set show would be, and everyone learned it and learned different positions. And just kind of having like a long weekend like that could be another way to like create team bonding. I know we're a little bit over here, so this is our last slide, but how to upkeep your team is also important. Like I mentioned earlier, there are only 4 or 5 years that you all are on campus, so making sure that there is a transition of leadership, and that's something you should also try to think about before you become a senior. I know I personally did not do great at this because I knew that like Graham was there and able to run it after me, but being intentional about like your leadership team and your exec board and who is going to take over it, and kind of maybe give a year to like train somebody to be in that position so that they know the ins and outs, because there are a lot of things. I have here renewing status. If you need to renew your like student org or sports club status each year, and that's a whole process. Applying for funding can be a whole process through the different organizations on campus. And another important part, again, I mentioned before, is financial stability. So there's a lot of different ways you can get funding to kind of support your program over the years. Through school funding, I know there's residential housing funding, there's student government funding, sports club, lots of different things you can apply for. There's also definitely grants. So we've gotten a lot of grants at UNC through like community foundations based on jump rope being like good for your health, working with kids, nutrition. So you can get really creative in how you do that. Fundraising is also super fun and a good team bonding thing. We had a lot of like dinner, restaurant, donating like 10% of all proceeds one night to our sports club. You can do like t-shirt sales. We did a puppies in the pit where everyone who had a dog brought it into, we have like this pit at UNC, and we fenced it off, and you could get in the fence and pet the puppies and have a popsicle if you paid $2. And that worked really well. We made like several $100s that day just on puppies and popsicles. So getting creative. And then the last one I have here is dues. we mentioned a little bit before, I think, Allie, and you were talking about it, making like it legitimate and making people commit. And having dues is a great way to do that. You know, if they have to pay $5 or $10 at the beginning of the semester, it kind of cements their commitment because they're like, oh, I paid for this club, I should probably come each week. That's a great way to make money and also support your team financially. And also, you know, we're probably going to continue to do NCJRA dues. And I think that just helps kind of legitimize the sport. A lot of other clubs and sports clubs, you do, you know, you pay your local dues, but then you have a national organization overseeing. And I think that just makes it more serious and real. Yeah, those are some of my tips on how to upkeep your team. I know some of you have a little bit of experience if you want to share that. Graham's joined here, so feel free to also offer in some advice.
I just say being a club sport has been the best thing because they handle, like, we just tell them what we need and they give it to us pretty much. So that's been big. We did do dues for some things, like Miami doesn't cover t-shirts or like certain things. So we have to come up with our own money or fundraising for that. But yeah, I think those are big funding ones.
Also, so we're just starting at Middlebury, but what we realized pretty quickly was that every new organization gets a certain amount of money, which is, some schools do that, some schools don't do that. I had literally no clue about this until a couple weeks ago. So it's been great because we get a certain amount of money, which pretty much covers anything that we need anyway. So I think for the time being, we're pretty set on cost wise, but that's always something that's worth checking out. Really, just as Noah was saying before, doing your research and just checking out because some things like that might surprise you, and it kind of takes care of itself.
Awesome. All right, that is the end of the presentation. I know the workshop is starting very soon, but thank you all for like sharing your input and just attending. This was recorded, so hopefully we can share it out to a few of the high schoolers and other first years who signed up. But y'all are doing awesome. Keep up the good work and excited to see how the rest of the weekend goes.
Bye, see you later.